Race is an issue that I believe this nation cannot afford to ignore right now. We would be making the same mistake that Reverend Wright made in his offending sermons about America, to simplify and stereotype and amplify the negative to the point that it distorts reality. The fact is that the comments that have been made and the issues that have surfaced over the last few weeks reflect the complexities of race in this country that we've never really worked through. A part of our union that we have not yet made perfect.
I agree with Senator Obama. It is time for America to have a conversation about race. I can't think of another issue facing our country that is more timely or more important today than the issue of racism. I also can't think of another issue that is more artificial, manufactured, and manipulated than this whole construct called racism. You see, I've grown suspicious of the term itself and of people who use it frequently.
As I'm learning, the term racism in common usage today has a sharply different meaning than what its believers say it means. And I use the word believers intentionally because, as I'm going to try to demonstrate, the believers in racism feel that racism is all around them, it's everywhere, all the time, yet they have a hard time coming up with any real-life examples of it, or even a definition of what it is. This phenomenon, or disconnect, was one reason I decided to look a little more closely into this. I mean, we have this term racism, which is used frequently by our media companies and by our own government to describe what they call the worst of human behaviors. Yet, as I'm going to illustrate, these are behaviors that we all engage in, every one of us. Yet, only a select few are ever identified or admonished publicly for their racism. And who are the select few? Who are the officially designated practitioners of racism? People like me, the white Americans of European heritage, the largest racial group in America. And this is what I'm going to demonstrate. This construct of racism is not an objective term. It has no concise definition. In fact, it's used too often as a tool of intimidation, like a hammer against Caucasian whites. And so for my demonstration, I'm simply going to interview some of racism's believers and look for inconsistencies. And finding believers is easy. I ran an ad in Craigslist for interview subjects under the heading of Ending Racism Now. We'll also stop at a busy street corner in downtown Denver and stop random passersby for their opinions on the subject. From there, I think we'll be able to determine what the conventional wisdom on racism really is, glaring contradictions and all. So those are my intentions. I'm not trying to make anyone look foolish, but the conventional wisdom on racism is so convoluted today that sometimes it's unavoidable. Do you see racism in your daily life?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
Do I see racism in my life? I see it every day. Every day.
I see racism in my daily life almost every place.
In my daily life.
Do you see racism in your daily life?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot?
Yes. It's still here. It's still here. It's still here.
I see racism in my daily life pretty much typically every day, you know.
You see it every day, like if you walk into a company and you're the only black person there, or you're the only Asian, or the only gay person, or the only Muslim person. It's not very diverse.
Do I see racism in my daily life? I do. I experience it in subtle ways, especially because of where I live. I've lived in other cities where it was more overt, but being in Colorado, everything it's like a subtle undercurrent.
I moved away from Denver when I was here before because I felt that Denver was racist, but then I found out all the cities are racist.
Phase 1 complete. Racism is everywhere. Now I'll ask the other question.
Can you tell me, in your opinion, what is racism?
I can tell you what racism is not.
To me, racism is when, it's so hard.
Racism is when we chop ourselves into categories. And I'm not sure why we do that, because when you really look at the quantum level or the basic fabric of the universe, there is no separation. You know, I am you, I am the chair, I am the wall, I'm the rug, I'm the rock, I'm the tree, I'm the grass, I'm everything.
My definition of racism deals with ignorance and lack of knowledge, lack of tolerance, and putting, it's as if saying, once we put a boundary, you and I can no longer communicate.
Obama, I think that people might not vote for him because he's black, and I think that it's the same thing with like sexism, because people might not vote for Hillary because she's a woman.
I see that as racism when you look at a person and because of what you've been taught and what you know from your family, what's been ingrained into your psyche, that's where your ideas of racism come from.
It's the racial profiling. It's that we have so many people of color, men of color in particular, in prisons. It's the disparities in economic class between different races.
The police harassing the homeless people and stuff like that, well, like that could be racism too, because we ain't making an income and stuff.
But don't they have to be a different race from the police for it to be racism?
No, it don't. Racism could be anything. Like I could be racist against him per se. He could be gay and I could be straight. That's still racism.
So that's racism to you?
Yeah.
That's what I mean by disconnects. I can't think of another word that's more common in usage today, yet so vague and even contradictory in meaning. Can anyone be blamed for being a little leery of such a flexible term? An actual definition of the term would be an important part of any conversation about race, but there isn't one. Or let me put it another way. There are hundreds of subjective, highly complex definitions, some of them paragraphs long. It seems that even our own wordsmiths are having trouble with this one. Some of the more readable definitions include this one from Wikipedia. The term usually denotes race-based prejudice, violence, discrimination, or oppression. Notice anything peculiar about that definition? Yeah? It says usually. You know, I don't want to date myself here, but I remember a time when definitions were, by definition, definite. But in definitions of the word racism today, we find words like usually. Wikipedia continues, the term can also have varying and hotly contested definitions. Does it seem rational for a word with hotly contested definitions to be so widely used, especially by our friends in the journalism industry? Here are definitions of racism from the American Heritage Dictionary and from Webster's. Within these definitions, we can see a common thread. The common thread is the belief that one race is superior to or better than another race. We'll label that as our conventional wisdom definition, and I'll get back to that in a moment. But back to the interviews. None could give me a concise definition of what racism is, yet each said they saw it in their daily lives. So this time, I'll ask for a description of any of these specific incidents, not the generalities we've all heard, but actual first-person accounts of racism.
Ooh, example. Ooh, man. Example. Oh, I guess, I'll
give you an example. I went to a local community college library to use a computer because I haven't gotten into an apartment yet. I'm returning to Denver. And I noticed that one of the guys that worked in the library, he's staring at me. He's pretending he's going to get coffee, but he's staring at me while I'm using the computer. So then when I leave, he and one of the other librarians, they say to me, well, goodbye now. Like it gave me the impression they were saying like good riddance now.
I take the light rail to school every day, and maybe a black person was being loud. And my automatic thought is to think, black people, they're so loud, or black people this or black people that. And it's wrong, and I realize it right away, but it's just the culture that I grew up in, this white culture, and racist culture that we live in. It's just bound to get you in one way or another.
For example, I see how my friends have to struggle, my friends who are people of color have to struggle with just getting through the day and dealing with the people that are in their lives or at stores who are giving them a hard time.
Say you have a white person come in, they'll greet the white person, and then a black person walks in and they'll get on you and ask you, is there something I can help you with? Can I find you something? Can I interest you in something? They'll pay more closer attention to the black person.
Sometimes if I go in the store, I've seen women like snatch their purse from one side of their arm and put it on the other side and look at me with a tight face, you know, so it's kind of hilarious, you know, knowing the kind of person I am, but then to see that reaction from other people, and sometimes it hurts. I mean, when you get a hateful reaction out of people that you don't even know, you know it's racism. At least I do.
I live in Lakewood, pretty white, and so when I occasionally see black people walking down the street, I don't feel any fear, or certainly not. I don't think of that. I just think, oh, there goes a black person. I mean, it's just because it's odd, because it's unusual. So I think that's, in a way, a kind of racism.
If I'm at work and I'm talking on the phone with someone and I'm talking with a coworker who is not black or whatever, they say, oh yes, sister, I understand what you're saying. And it's like, why would you, are you saying that to me because I'm black? Would you say that if you was talking to like an Asian person?
One example is there are more people, like let's take the job sites for instance. Okay, if you got 10 black people going for a job, I say maybe 2 will get considered for that job versus 5 white people.
And that means any job?
Any job.
I have a vivid recollection of being in a ski lift line, teenager, and you know, people are talking back and forth, and I made what I thought was a curious comment, and this family who was in front of me, the father turned around, looked at me, and as soon as he looked at me and realized that I wasn't just like him, he just sort of like, his face froze, everything just, and then the whole family just, everybody stopped laughing because it was obviously immediately not funny.
Sure, when I was a child, I came up to a water fountain, and the teacher, I put my lips to the water fountain, and the teacher said, Lane, don't do that. Black people do that. So there I am, I'm a young lieutenant in the Army, I just got through digging a foxhole with a black lieutenant. And we just dug really deep, and it's hot, and we're sweating, and we're tired. And I take my canteen, and I open it, and I take a drink. He takes his canteen out, and it's empty. Now that's a crisis.
What are you going to do?
Yeah. And you look at this individual next to you, who's now your comrade at arms, and is going to fight and bleed for your country with you, and you got the same blisters, but he's completely different. And you look at him, and he's got much larger lips, and there's a message in your head that says his lips are dirty because he might have sucked on a water fountain. What the shit is that? And you look at him and you make a decision. Right then and there you say, is he my brother in arms or is he black?
Which decision did you make?
I handed him my canteen, and he knew because he was from South Carolina, and he looked at me and he said, you want me to use the canteen cup? Because he knows. And I said, no, you're my comrade in arms. And he drank, and he licked his lips before he drank because his lips were dry. And he handed it back to me, and he watched me. And I looked at him, and I drank.
And you swapped spit with him?
In essence, we swapped spit. I mean, what are you going to do? You share a canteen, and I swap and spit. And at that moment, I realized how much racism was in there. Insidious. Well, I am from the South, and every now and then my accent will come out a little bit.
And people tell you look a little bit like Bill Clinton.
Mostly black.